I think the story's going to speak for itself, and the reaction to it will speak for itself. And I know how it's going to go, and I'm not going to bother to say it.
I will say this. If Barack Obama were standing there and somebody else was asking a question and somebody decided to stand up and make a political statement,
there was an intensity in a
well, the guy
statement
flew all the way out there to ask a question. Right. I think I'd seen him on CNN last night. This is a very big moment for him. This is 15 minutes of fame, and you can be shocked and stunned and deeply saddened at Donald Trump's immigration policy. We've been critical of what he said on the air here. But if I'm holding a press conference, or you're holding a press conference, you're holding a press conference, and you saw a guy, trying to get his 15 minutes of fame the night before, and pretending he was Walter Cronkite on the convention floor when or Dan Rather on the convention floor with Daley's thugs pulling him out, when actually this was all staged by you.
I'm putting the filter back on.
No, I'm sorry.
Aww.
It's just the truth. The guy was making a political... You got a question to ask.
Disagree.
Ask a question. If you want to make a political statement, you can hold your own press conference.
Couple of things. Reporters are not hired necessarily to be polite.
Right.
That's true.
And they shouldn't be.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm totally with it.
We're not polite.
The other aspect of it is, and he will get very little credit for it, Trump handled that very well. I mean, he handled it very well. He
let him back in, took questions.
Yeah.
When he calmed down.
Yeah.
About 10 minutes later, Ramos was allowed back in, and Trump called on him twice. Here's part of their exchange.
So here's the problem with your immigration plan. It's full of empty persons.
Okay.
You cannot deport 11 million undocumented immigrants. You cannot deny citizenship to the children in this country. You cannot build a 19...
Why do you say that?
You cannot do that.
Well, a lot of people think, no, excuse me.
You have to change the Constitution, Mr. Trump.
A lot of people, but a lot of people think that's not right, that an act of Congress can do it. Now, it's possibly going to have to be tested in courts, but a lot of people think that if you come and you're on the other side of the border, I'm not talking about Mexico, somebody on the other side of the border, a woman is getting ready to have a baby, she crosses the border for one day, has the baby, all of a sudden, for the next 80 years, hopefully longer, but for the next 80 years, we have to take care of the people. I don't think this, no, I don't think so. Excuse me, some of the greatest legal scholars, and I know some of the television scholars agree with you, but some of the great legal scholars agree that that's not true. That if you come across, excuse me, yeah, just 1 second.
So the question is, how are you going to build a 1,900 miles wall?
Very easy. I'm a builder. That's easy. I build buildings that are 94. Can I tell you what's more complicated? What's more complicated is building a building that's 95 stories tall. Okay? You think so, really? Well, I don't think so. A lot of people don't think so.
How are you going to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants by...
Here's what we're going to do. Ready? Okay.
Are you going to bring the army?
No. Let me tell you. We're going to do it in a very humane fashion. Believe me. I have a bigger heart than you do. We're going to do it in a very humane fashion. The one thing we're going to do...
Rights violations will be all over the place. One question. Is there one question you want to ask? We're going to move on.
Okay. The one thing we're going to start with immediately are the gangs and the real bad ones. And you do agree there are some bad ones. Do you agree with that, or do you think everyone's just perfect? No. I'd ask you a question. Do you agree with that? We have tremendous crime. We have tremendous problems. I can't deal with this. Listen, we have tremendous crime. We have some very bad ones. And I think you would agree with that, right? Okay, there are a lot of bad ones, real bad ones. Go ahead, Jorge.
The Latino vote. You say that you're going to win the Latino vote.
I think so, because I'm going to bring jobs back.
But the truth is, I've seen the polls, the Univision poll says 75% of Latinos.
How much am I suing Univision for right now? No. Do you know the number? No. Tell me. Tell me. Do you know the number? And you know you're a part of the lawsuit. How much am I suing Univision for?
The question is, Mr. Trump.
Wait.
I'm a reporter.
It's $500 million.
I'm a reporter.
Okay, good. And they're very concerned about it, I have to tell you. I'm very good at this stuff.
Okay. Well, as I said from the beginning, he gave a lecture. He wasn't asking a question. And I don't know what politician would have been actually that. I wouldn't have been that patient with him. I would have said, you got a question? Hold your own press conference.
Look, he has the absolute right to stand and ask a question.
Sure.
He does.
Which Trump gave him that right. In an extended basis. He asked several questions. But at some point, you have to realize that he's involved, Mr. Ramos is involved in a debate with Mr. Trump. Not a question and answer period. It's a debate.
He doesn't ask him a question from the very beginning, Willie. he's lecturing him. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't da-da-da-da. I'm sorry, I think he was a lot more patient, actually, than Barack Obama would have been if somebody lectured. Barack Obama, rightly, would not allow somebody to stand up and lecture him that long.
Well,
ask a question.
I would hesitate to compare Trump to the President of the United States yet. But remember that exchange with Major Garrett when he asked something that was perceived as impolite and the media went crazy that he wasn't polite. So that's to your point. The backdrop Donald pointed out is that he's suing Univision for $500 million. I don't like seeing any journalist hauled out of a room like that physically, but there's a way press work. And Donald Trump clearly would have called on Jorge Ramos. He called on him twice after the fact. And Casey Hunt actually was in the room. Be interested to hear her point of view. She's in Dubuque, Iowa. What was it like in the room, Casey?
Hey, Willie. I think that it was an extraordinarily uncomfortable and difficult situation. I think on the one hand, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been in hundreds of these types of press conferences. Often you get to know the politician you're asking questions of, whether they like to call on people, whether it is in many ways a question simply of who yells the loudest. Both go that way, or go different ways. I think in this particular case, there were other options for Trump than to have him ejected right at the beginning, but I do think it's interesting that he ultimately brought him back in. That's in some ways a mea culpa for Trump, and a rare one at that. You guys know as well as anyone that he really doesn't tend to back down off of anything, and in this case he did let Ramos back into the room. You know, he also suggested that he didn't know who Ramos was in some of the follow-up questions, but, you know, his first response did mention Univision. So I think that it may be a little bit questionable as well. But, you know, at the end of the day, Trump did bring Ramos back into the room, and he was able to, as you saw, have that exchange.
But
you can judge
Casey,
that how you will.
Casey, as a reporter, what do you think about another, and I'll put it in quotation marks right now, another reporter giving a speech while the rest of you just watch and turning a press conference into a grand spectacle?
Look, Joe, I think that, you know, all of us have to decide how we're going to conduct ourselves in those rooms, right? But I do think that what happened at the top of that back and forth, the idea that somebody is going to be thrown out, silence, not allowed
but Casey,
is something that gives a lot of reporters pause.
He wasn't asking a question. I'm asking you as a reporter, what do you think when a guy stands up and doesn't ask a question and he begins at the top delivering a lecture?
Well, look, Joe, I mean, the reality is Jorge Ramos has a particular perspective on this particular issue, and that's different from a lot of other reporters in the room. And I think you can have a legitimate debate about how that fits into, you know, what these press conferences should be and how they should work. But I will say that President Obama has also taken pretty difficult questions, and you may argue lectures, from Jorge Ramos over the years. He suggested in one interview that Obama was the deporter-in-chief, which Obama took not very well, and it ended up in a testy exchange. So,
Casey, let me just touch. That was a one-on-one situation. I just want to, I'm not taking sides here. I just want to add some context, though, and Willie, you take it back to Casey. They do know each other. I believe he is the anchor who Donald Trump Instagrammed a letter that he wrote, which included his cell phone number. There's tension between those two already, and it's been contentious. And there's this lawsuit that they absolutely know each other and who they are and the context. But so it was already beginning with a little bit of stress. And the guy jumped in at the top, and he started delivering a little bit of a lecture, or at least kind of, he clearly had a position that he was intent on pushing. And he wasn't thrown, Donald Trump didn't say throw him out. His guy, Keith, just kind of walked over and backed him out of the room, and Trump brought him back in and answered 3 questions. So just for clarity, he wasn't thrown out, and he did answer questions. I thought it was brilliantly played by Trump. I really do.
Except for the fact they weren't questions. They were one lecture after another lecture, and him lecturing Donald Trump on the Constitution.
I think he kind of got
I'm sorry.
owned.
I'm just going to say it. If I'm a reporter sitting in that room, I'm going to say, if you want to deliver a lecture, get a room, and we'll go, and we'll ask you questions.
Yeah, I mean, Casey's absolutely right. I mean, it had to be, I've been in those rooms, and it had to be uncomfortable for the rest of the media. I mean, you don't want to stand up and you don't want to tell Mr. Ramos, hey, sit down, buddy. You asked your question. You don't want to do that.